Around 410 AD, Roman rule ended in Britain. When the Romans left, they took with them the system of Roman law that had previously governed England. Another consequence of the Romans leaving was that England became undefended. Vikings took the opportunity to raid and eventually settle, as did tribes from other parts of northern Europe, such as the Angles and the Saxons. Different areas of England, later became known as earldoms, followed different sets of laws, and there were variations from area to area. For example, the north of England was mostly settled by Vikings, and they followed the Danelaw. This period of English history is known as Anglo-Saxon England, and it lasted for over 600 years. In Anglo-Saxon England, the king made the law. Kings such as Edward the Confessor decided on what punishment should be given for each crime. The people believed that it was the king's duty to take care of law and order, so they could go about their everyday lives in peace. This was known as the King's Peace. Anglo-Saxon punishments were quick and cheap. They usually involved physical pain to the body. Capital punishment was the death penalty, used for cases of treason or some cases of murder. Treason has always carried the harshest punishment throughout England's history, because rulers have always wanted to enforce loyalty. Executions in Anglo-Saxon England were usually done by beheading or hanging. Corporal punishment was physical punishment to the criminal's body. Usually a limb was removed or mutilated. For example, having a hand removed was the most common punishment for people who repeatedly stole from others in the community. Seeing a disfigured criminal served as a reminder to others in the community of the consequences for breaking the law. Another form of corporal punishment was branding. This involved using a hot iron to put a mark on the criminal by burning their flesh. The mark or brand was permanent and served as a way of marking the person out as a criminal. Blood feuds. This was an early Anglo-Saxon punishment for murders. Members of the victim's family were allowed to kill a member of the murderer's family. This created a cycle of violence as both families took revenge on one another.
A few moments later.
In some instances, entire families would die during a blood feud, and this was not good for the kingdom. Wergild was eventually introduced as a non-violent alternative. Wergild literally translates to man price. It was a fine paid in most cases of murder. Wergild was paid directly to the victim's family to compensate for their loss of life. The level of fine was set by the king's laws. Wergild was a less brutal solution to the blood feuds, but that does not mean it was fair. Anglo-Saxon society was not equal. There were big differences in the amount of Wergild attached to a person's life, based on their position in society and how valuable the king judged their life to be worth.
If you've been injured in an accident at work, on the road, or after a trip or fall anywhere, call for instant free claims advice, and our compensation experts will tell you within minutes if you could make a claim. It's no win, no fee, and you keep 100% as we recover all costs from the other side.
Botgeld. This was very similar to modern day compensation, but was used to settle cases of physical injury. Different body parts had different prices. The loss of an eye was worth 50 shillings, whereas a broken arm cost 6 shillings. Because the person responsible for the injury paid the victim, this helped the victim to feel like they had retribution. For minor crimes, the stocks or pillories were used. Placed in the centre of the village, Anglo-Saxons called them catchnecks.
Are you content to die there?
Because of the way they held the criminal's head in place. This was an effective combination of physical discomfort and public humiliation. The criminal would feel a great sense of embarrassment knowing their neighbours had seen them go through this experience. There were no prisons in Anglo-Saxon England, so punishments were brutal because they had to work as a deterrent. Brutal punishments to put others off from committing the same crime. That's why people found guilty of serious crimes often received capital or corporal punishments. Community ties were important, so they played a role in most punishments. Even minor punishments were focused on making a criminal stand out from others in the community. Overall, crime didn't happen as often in Anglo-Saxon England as it did in later periods of English history.
If you've been injured in an accident at work, on the road, or after a trip or fall anywhere, call for instant free claims advice, and our compensation experts will tell you within minutes if you could make a claim.